Now, say my name.
The Rolling Bad Podcast.
You're goddamn right.
Okay, coming to you almost live from the Seal Temple Tower in Leonia, Galicia. It's the Rolling Bad Podcast, episode number 161. It is May 19th, and I'm your host, Bill Costello. With me today,
all the way from still at episode 160, it's Joshua Alt.
And our special guest today?
Well, coming to you also almost live from the wonderful farmland of Eastern Pennsylvania. My name is Ulf, and I'm here to, talk about geek stuff, have some good conversations, and, offer some opinions on some things that have been going on in the wargaming space lately online. So thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks for being
no problem.
Here.
Thank you for being a Discord member and a loyal listener for all those years. I pity you at some points.
That's going around.
Yeah, we just wonder why he keeps coming back for more, right?
I have wondered that, for ages. Why do our subscriber numbers never plummet? People don't get tired. And on a side note, I had a very sad revelation yesterday. I was listening to podcasts driving back from the airport, and I would listen to this MCP podcast called Across the Bifrost, and it's Pat Dunford and Sung Tzu, or TT. Pat Dunford is that guy from England that wins everything MCP. Mm-hmm. And they're stopping the podcast. Pat's having a daughter. TT has really been he hasn't had the love for MCP for a while. You can kind of tell. But yeah, they're stopping the show after 200 shows, a couple hundred shows. And it's sad because they were really, really good. And oh well. But we keep trucking on.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that podcast as well. I was sad to hear that announcement, but there's a lot of other ones in the MCP space that are great. I've been enjoying Rogue Agents a lot. Shout out to Rogue Agents, my current favorite.
Yeah, they're very good too. I like them. Yeah, and just all the best to Pat and his new family, bringing a daughter into the world. Yay! So I looked at the pre-orders yesterday on the Games Workshop thing, and it was all this made-to-order Middle-earth stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, just totally not impactful stuff at all. So that gives me hope that we're coming up on this new AOS 4.0 box. I don't know if it's going to be next week, but I bet you the first week in June. What do you think?
I think somewhere around there. Usually these made-to-order weeks are a big, deep breath before they have to charge in headlong on new product. And, oh boy, we'll have a lot to say about new AOS.
Oh, geez, yeah. And, it's natural that they give themselves a break to get that mass shipping out, because you have to figure that they have to ship to all the distributors, Alliance, Bridge, all those places. And plus, as well, you have to get it to your flagship stores. You have to get it to the independent retailers. They need more than 2 weeks, I think, to get that stuff pre-positioned.
How much do you guys think that they're going to be sending out to their unofficial reviewers, podcasters and social media types and so on? Do you think that stuff's going to go out with enough of a lead to really get people building things and reporting on it ahead of time?
It usually does. I don't know what the embargo is, but having talked to some of those people that are on the Pleasant for Plastic program, they get stuff in time to do all the stuff. They get it a month before it hits the announcements.
Yeah.
So that they can build it and paint it. Like Darcy Bono will have a painting video out the day it drops.
Yeah.
And that means she's done a lot of work prior to, and all the other creators. So
I wouldn't be surprised if they already have it and they're working on it now.
Oh yeah, easy.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, with the amount of models in that box, having to make sure everything's painted to full scale so that way you can play it on YouTube. Yeah, they're going to have to get them out, especially with freaking 40 clan rats and some of the most ornate Stormcast armor we've seen since the beginning of the game.
Dear God, I hate them. Oh, God, I hate them. No, we're burying the lead here because, wow. Yeah, okay. Let's drop new AOS. The new White Dwarf number 500 hit the streets yesterday. And I was kind of shocked by this issue. It's an issue of White Dwarf. There's one article in there about the history of White Dwarf, and it's not even really that long. I kind of thought they would, dive more into Jesus, we published 500 of these things. But I'm really glad they didn't, because there's really good content in there for all the different game systems. And it's just a regular issue of White Dwarf with some cool stuff in it. So our store sold out on Friday afternoon. They got them Friday morning, and they were sold out by Friday afternoon.
Yep.
So this is a thing. 500 issues of a magazine. I mean, I know Time and Life and all that stuff hit that category years ago, but this is a gaming magazine.
With no advertisements,
Yeah.
no advertising dollars inside of it. That's the shocking part, is it sustained itself just on goodwill and sort of marketability within its own niche thing. It's pretty impressive.
That is a really good point. Yeah, there's no profit from that other than the sticker price, which on a magazine like that, there's no margin on that, I don't believe, or not a lot. It's a loss leader, but good on them. Good on them.
Well, yeah, I mean, these kinds of things keep infusing sometimes new life into game systems that, don't get frequent updates.
Yeah.
Like I love the different little scenario things you can only pick out of a White Dwarf. I think some of the Necromuna stuff has been some of the best. And then, it connects you to others in the hobby as well. Just by saying that, like, oh yeah, other people still play this game, not just me and my local community.
Yeah.
So let me make a quick note here, if I may. Let's remind ourselves of White Dwarf 500 a little bit later on when we talk about the online discourse piece.
Oh, okay.
Because I have some that's going to circle back to this that is a little interesting and that may have flown under the radar a little bit.
Oh, I'm gonna be excited about that.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it up top.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I like that. And last but not least, in the tentative intro thing, I want to say I watched a video the other day about the sales numbers for miniatures gaming lines, and I got to tell you, I was floored by what that chart showed. The top 5 selling miniature lines for the fourth quarter of 2023. So obviously this is 5 months old. But in order were Warhammer 40,000 from Games Workshop. Duh. Next up was Nolzur's Marvelous Miniatures from WizKids, which is always going to be on the top because it's D&D. And there's a lot more D&D people than there are miniatures people. Next, in third, was Battletech. And I was like, what the hell? But it makes sense. The Kickstarter probably pushed those numbers through the roof as they sold hundreds of miniatures. But then the next two are the ones that really got me. Star Wars Shatterpoint was 4th, and Marvel Crisis Protocol was 5th, both of them from Atomic Mass Games. And that just floored me that Shatterpoint is doing so well, sales-wise, and yet you don't see all that much content for it. It boggles my mind. And then, of course, the notable exception from that list is, where the hell's AOS?
Well, I mean, AOS near the end of an edition. It doesn't have much hype right now, so it's not like a lot of people were really going to go out and invest just with the whispers of a new edition on the horizon. I mean,
it's true. That could be very true. And the other thing I'm wondering is if they may have lumped all of Games Workshop sales into the flagship Warhammer 40,000. And that might just be a conglomeration of all their lines, because I know they showed a sales increase of 15% over the second half of 2023, but the profit increase was only like 7%. So a lot of overhead that they're adding for new stores and what have you. But
that could also coincide with the launch of a 10th edition.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say. Also, Nolzur's being number 2 makes me wonder: is this sales based on dollars or sales based on units moved?
This information is grabbed from retailers, distributors, and manufacturers. So it's going to be, I don't know where the granularity is going to be.
Yeah. So
I would doubt that it's at the miniature level, the model level. I think it's more at the package level.
Well, that's impressive then. That Battletech is so high then.
Well, I mean, Bill's been championing it for the last, years. And
I'm single-handedly going to bring that game back to the forefront.
Because you're buying it.
I wish you luck. I have fond memories of my earliest days in gaming being Battletech. It's my first miniatures game.
Nice.
I remember the days of feeling sorry, not sorry, of stacking 20 helicopters in a single hex because you were allowed to do that vertically, and then, blowing the engines on one and wiping the entire board. We had we had all the shenanigans back in the day.
You did all the cheese.
all of it. It was beautiful.
That's awesome. Oh, those were some fun days. Oh my gosh.
Dark
yes.
ages of gaming.
Yeah, some of it.
Yeah.
You know, we look back
what's this mech? 10 tons, 30 flamers? Yes, please. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly. What do you mean I need fire control system? No, I don't. I just need more fire.
Yeah, I control the fire because I push it forward towards the bad guys. That's the fire control I need.
Yeah, something quality all its own.
Okay, so coming out new from Games Workshop since the last time we recorded, just going to hit a couple of highlights. The Darktide box dropped, which, if you don't know, Darktide is like Kill Team Light. It's a more, I want to say, more consumer-friendly version of Kill Team, supposed to, a little bit more approachable. And the odd thing about this is you were able to order it from the web store, I believe, but it is exclusive to retailers, not to Games Workshop stores. Mm-hmm. So you'll see it at Target, you'll see it at Barnes & Noble, all different, game outlets and stores, as opposed to it being a product you'll find at your local Games Workshop store. So they're starting to branch out a little bit into those different distribution avenues, which is pretty cool. Let's get mainstream with it.
I think that's been a move they've been starting to make for quite some time, is trying to branch out to other folks who do enjoy games, board gaming being such a interesting thing right now, particularly since it's so accessible at Barnes & Noble and Target, places like that.
And this is what kills me, though, is they've needed something like this. A light version of even Kill Team is a little much for the average board game player, the Carcassonne player, the Settlers of Catan player is not going to grok Kill Team off the bat.
Well, they did a very successful thing with Blitz Bowl, over the past couple of years. Blitz Bowl, apparently sold really well, and you hear a lot of people praising it.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say Blitz Bowl is just a phenomenally good game.
Yeah, and you don't hear Blood Bowl really much at all, other than in the digital space. But then you hear people doing these like I listen to a lot of podcasts. I consume a lot of my Warhammer and gaming engagement in general, because the last 6 months' work has been punishing me like I have wronged it personally somehow.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my engagement with the hobby over the last 6-7 months has been podcasting, driving and listening to things and unwinding. And you hear a lot of podcasts talking about tournaments, right? Like we went to LVO, we went to this one, that one. And you always hear people going, and what was the biggest representation? Was Blood Bowl.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't heard the words blood and bowl in that order, like anywhere in the online space. But then you go to an event, there's like 600 people playing next to a 400 person 40K event. And you're like, what? Like, is that real? Is that true? But I mean, I'm sure this sort of like more branching out and making things more accessible is part of that. Because when's the last time you heard, GW Prime, so to speak, like say boo about Blood Bowl? But there it is, alive and like thriving. I think the Blitz Bowl model has something to do with that.
I would agree with that. And I think that of all the games that really cross over into other spheres, like Blitz Bowl and Blood Bowl are one of those where you have those, particularly in America and stuff like that, people who are football fanatics.
Yeah.
And they like to play their fantasy football. And then you give them like a physical representation of something they can do, and they can paint it like their favorite teams and all that. I mean, I've seen so many people just in my own life who I've gotten more interested in Blood Bowl when I've been talking about, products than even the 40K stuff, eyes glaze over, but it's like, oh, but this is like rugby meets football meets murder. And they're like, oh, can you show me that one?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, sure. I've got 2 teams right here. Let's go. Right. I think that lends to why it can branch out so far beyond what us big old nerds play.
Yeah. And having that digital tie-in with the Blood Bowl games that have always been so faithful to the board game that if you have played the computer game, you can pretty much sit down and gloss over the rule book real fast, and you've got it. You know it. So that, I think, helps a little bit. I don't know how much, but it seems like it makes for a much easier bridge into that sphere. So good on them. I love it. I have said that they need to come out with, they've tried before to do these Warcry Light and these Sigmar Light things, and they've always kind of just not been good. I'm hoping that Dark Tide catches on, although the price point, $110 for that box, that's a little much for miniatures you have to assemble. I mean, they're push fits, but even then, I can spend that same amount of money on some other games from other publishers where the miniatures are ready to go. I just plop the game down and I start playing. There's no prep. So I think they have to work on that end of it, but they're a big company. They'll figure it out. They like the dollars.
Can I throw a quick shout out to a board game that has just a stellar box set, and it's like you're talking about, something that's ready to go out of the box. That's a great experience, and that is $100 and whatever too much for that. I want to know, have you guys ever played a game called Dead of Winter?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I was going to say that to me is like, everyone just needs to go and look at that game, and in this capitalist hellscape that we live in, they just need to shamelessly pirate whatever those guys are doing right.
Yep.
Because I was looking at the reason I bring it up is I was looking at Dark Tide board game. I like board games, and I was like, every single thing I looked at, I was like, yeah, but I already can do this Dead of Winter. This is like, if I don't care about the IP, are they breaking new ground with it, or is it just like an IP translation?
Right.
And that's the thing about it, And I don't know. I haven't played Dark Tide, obviously, so but it's interesting to see what direction they're going to go with these Blitzball Dark Tide style tie-in games, if we want to call them that. Are they going to be games that stand on their own merit, that have some interesting mechanics, which is why I bring up Dead of Winter, that has a lot of interesting interactivity with the whatever they call it, the occurrences deck, that yellow deck, that also the crisis things that happen, which is very innovative. Or is it just going to be here's Ogren bash things good, Psyker head blow up, plus las guns go, the board game.
Yeah, that's I'm interested. I haven't popped my copy open yet, but I'm interested to see. And what I want to do is just hand the rulebook over to my wife and say, figure this out and we'll play, and see what her interpretation of it is. Because I know I'll come into it biased. So,
well, report on it in a future episode. I'd love to hear your take on it.
You will. I'm going to track this. I really want to know how this fares, and I'm interested in how this develops. I hope it goes well for them. All right, so in other news, Tau dropped for 40K, and when I mean dropped, I mean, wow, if you want to play Tau without ever playing Tau, you can now do that. I was watching a game at the store Saturday afternoon, and one side was completely croot. It was just, there wasn't a Tau model in sight, and they were having a great old game. So I was impressed. What else dropped from GW? That's about all I can think of.
I mean, you got your slew of made-to-order Lord of the Rings stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Hobbit that just dropped. Because
yeah, as a case in point, one of those super rare models, the Eowyn model, is in the Heroes of Helm Deep box, which is kind of it's a make me angry kind of box, because you get Aragorn that you already have, Legolas you already have, Gimli you already have. You get a different sculpt for Theoden, and then you have Éomer. And then the only thing that's really kind of unique that makes this box something that you couldn't have gotten before is the Éowyn model. And it's $80 for Éowyn. I'm like, God dang, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I can imagine, but I'll probably order it today. God,
she is no bargain,
Not really, but the way I look at it is there's always somebody that wants that Theoden model or the Éomer alternate sculpt. So maybe make a little bit of that back. Who knows? And then in other news, for Parabellum, the massive Sorcerer King stuff dropped. And it's like,
oh yeah,
Josh is in heaven. As well as some other things that got announced. The chariots are getting ready to drop for City States, which is super cool. Some other things they've finally confirmed and announced the guy for the Nords. I can't remember his name now. It's a model. It's a officer for the Nords who is going to have a real impact in list building because he's awesome. What else? That's about it. In the MCP world, they did a couple of real shock drops. So there's a box with a normal box that has Gwenom and Scarlet Spider, which is what you expect, is 2 characters in a box. And then they have the other box, which is the rest of the Sinister Six. So you get Electro, Sandman, Shocker, and Vulture, 4 characters in a box. I'm like,
inject that directly into my veins, please.
Yes. Right.
Spider Foes is my jam, has been since I started MCP.
Nice.
I was beyond excited, and boy, I almost broke my keyboard pre-ordering that thing. So good.
I'll bet you. Yeah, I picked it up yesterday. I'm dying. That Sandman is so cool. God.
Yeah, and we can geek out about MCP at some point later. I know it's New Dawn right now, but I think Electro has potential to be like the new defining, like the new bar for what makes a good 4 threat.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think he has tech in there that people aren't seeing, that is not obvious, that is like, we were kind of play testing a little bit yesterday, actually, with me and some of my friends, and we ran through like what Electro could do in this situation. They were just like, nah, like, show me that card again.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
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 And we're like, oh yeah, he spends 2 power and he goes 16 inches across the board. They don't even have a measuring tool long enough for that.
Yeah.
Hey, Atomic Mass. You do realize that you broke your own rules.
Love it.
I do too. Yeah, it's going to be. I am seriously going down that road of wanting to play Spider Foes now. Now that the new Doc Ock from the core box is a thing, I just really want to get them.
So good.
Original.
And we've been waiting. We've been waiting a long time. The Spider Foes players out there have been like, kind of saddled with Green Goblin, and just the options that it opens up, and how the verisimilitude of how it plays that play style is so good, because it's all teamwork and setting up zones that are dangerous to wander into, and you're building like a trap for the spider people. It's so perfectly represents what they are in the comics. Yeah, some of the best, I think, writing they've done. And I mean, those guys, AMG, talk about heavy hitters. They're like the Mike Tyson of rules writers. Those guys, they're the guys who wrote War Machine Mark III.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which in my opinion is the best miniatures, rule set ever written. Unfortunately, that community does not live up to that same that same standard as far as implementing that rule set, but that's a different discussion. And 2D terrain needs to be taken out behind the shed, if you know what I'm saying. So that they never really got the representation, I think, of how great those rules were, in the public space.
Yeah, I think part of their biggest problem over there at Privateer was the owner, but B, the fact that they always embraced the competitive aspect and really downplayed the hobby aspect. And it gives you some flash growth, but it doesn't give you sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm sorry.
It also invites in a certain arc of like the player lifespan of like, I go into a game at first, I like cool models, then I want cool rules, then I want to win, then I don't care about winning anymore, then I play for hobby and fun. And I think that's where AOS keeps going.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And 40K keeps going. And Privateer Press, like, you see people like binning their armies or selling $5,000 worth of troll lists for $100 on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
And they never really understood that that's like a, it's like a behavioral trend of like, we go from here to this, to this, to this, to this. And then you have to have a sustainable exit ramp that leads to like, now I want more armies.
Yes.
But they never really did that.
And, one thing that GW has always been so good at, even with their crazy unbalanced rules and unbalanced faction stuff, they have always managed to sell it as a hobby, not a game. And, it shows in the the longevity of the system. You still have people talking about their early experiences with Warhammer and how much it sucked, and they're still in it. And you're like, if you hate it that much, why are you still buying it all?
Yeah. Well, complaining about the hobby is the hobby, right?
Well, it's a facet. It's one of the pillars. Yeah. Complaining about GW is, I think, has to be added to become one of the pillars of the hobby. So,
yeah.
All right, let's talk creation. What have we been working on? Why don't we start with you, Ulf? What have you been working on?
What have I been working on? I've been working on trying to find time in my schedule to work on miniatures, honestly. in the big picture, I just got into Conquest. Really haven't played much yet, other than just pushing some models around to like demo the rules to myself. So I have a wildly inappropriate amount of spires sitting here and a reasonable amount of Nords, and just enjoying building them. I love the bigger scale. It's something I never really messed with, except for my shameful foray into Inquisitor in 2003. But other than that, most of my stuff has been the smaller scale things, and I love the models. They're fantastic, and we were talking a little bit in the pregame about coming back to staying with the show and being active on the Discord and stuff. I really like that you guys aren't just Warhammer purists. That other games get a mention, other games get a little bit of spotlight shown on them. Good, bad, or indifferent, and part of me deciding that Conquest was something I wanted to look at was actually like hearing you guys talk about it. So yeah, I've been getting into that, painting MCP like I always do. MCP is rapidly becoming my main game, just because it plays quick.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
My main game love is AOS, but it's a lot harder to get 5 hours of time in with setup and breakdown and BSing in AOS than it is to get 45 minutes of MCP in.
It's so true. It's so true, because nowadays when I look at, we could play AOS or we could play 2 games of MCP or 3 games of Shatterpoint. Let's just break out the Shatterpoint. Let's break out the MCP. It's just so much easier, and I hate that. I love this. Is one of the reasons why I love the idea of the spear point stuff is I'm going to be able to play a game in an hour. Well, no, not me. I'm such a slow leaker. It'll be 2 hours for me, but I'll be able to get 2 or 3 games in an afternoon, evening. So, I cannot wait.
One thing about MCP too that I think is, for me, very fun about it is that you're not necessarily having to paint the same characters over and over and over again, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, once you buy that model, you have it for use in whatever, because you don't use duplicates. I mean, unless you're trying to play with a friend or something and teach them things. But as far as it goes, like each time you paint a new model, it's a different model than you were painting before. Yeah. And I really enjoy that, since it's lack of repetition. Granted, you need to be more creative and be flexible with what you're painting at the time, but you get a lot out of MCP just by being able to bounce to your favorite characters.
Yeah.
Well, your dopamine delivery for task completion is higher. Not to get too behavioral in it, but the way that it delivers dopamine is substantially different from a larger scale war game, and it means that when people get into it, they tend to ramp quicker. They tend to get an MCP, and you don't just buy 4 MCP models, you buy 30, and then you don't just buy 4 more to support that, you buy 30 more.
Bill,
because you can. Because. Listen, I'm guilty too. I'm holding my head up as well. But you what you're saying, you paint one model and it's done, and that in your mind checks a box of this hobby task is now completed, as opposed to finishing one model and going 9 more Terminators. Oh no, or 30 more chain rasps in my case.
Yeah, it can be done.
Painting 50 blade guys nearly broke me.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, I can see why. I can see why.
That means 50 broken blade guy swords too. That's awesome. So what else have you been up to? Anything else?
No, that's pretty much it. I've been building a little bit of terrain here and there because I enjoy that.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Cool beans. Josh, what are you up to?
So I mean, the freaking Sorcerer Kings dropped, and so I built the Rakshasa Bakasura / Ravidar. I built it like the Bakasura because it has like the 4 swords and it just looks sick, right?
It is sick.
Certainly when I play First Blood, I'll be playing it as the Ravidar, since it's the natural counter to monsters and elites, which pretty impactful in First Blood. But I mean, the sculpt's amazing. It goes together like a dream. Beautiful, beautiful model. I built the box of the Steelheart Djinn. Those are the genie ladies with the halberds, not the bows.
Yep. Again,
those went together amazingly well. Parabellum just keeps outdoing themselves with each new release, I think.
Yeah.
And then working on more Rajakur. I just have, as much as I like building the Sorcerer Kings, like those foot troops are just hurting me right now. it's just too simple, and it's not like flashy like everything else that I have is. So it's not as attracting me as much. But I'm slogging through that part. But I haven't been able to get any painting in. I have also had the curse of work that everyone else has the last month. So I've been able to just get a little building in. That was it. How about you, Bill?
Well, along that front, the drops for Legions Imperialis have been coming pretty hot and heavy. So at that first wave with the drop pods and some of the other toys that came in, I really wanted to have those up and running. So I built a bunch of the drop pod boxes, got a whole bunch more, all the way up to the primed and ready to paint. But since I'm doing Raven Guard, primed is pretty much done. Prime and black, then you can walk away. But I'm not going to do that. So got a lot of Legions Imperialis stuff. I was able to pick up another box of the terrain for Legions Imperialis, which after you've played that game for a little while, you realize how incredibly important it is to have tons of buildings and terrain on the board. Otherwise, infantry evaporates no matter what you do. At least having them in a building gives them a snowball's chance to survive. I want to get to the point to where I can choke a board with buildings and, just keep the Titans from just running amok and maybe put a dent in the Astra Militarum. Okay, I just said that, didn't I? I'm so bad. The Solar Auxilia put a little dent in their capability. But yeah, that's been fun. The Conquest models go together so brain dead easy, and they're so well, it's that typical GW, their new mentality of when you put a model together. I'm almost getting to the point now to where I don't shave mold lines and I don't do any cleanup on the model until it's done, because they hide so much of the stuff that's on there with their assembly and their this covers that. So I love that. And in fact, on the Parabellum front, interestingly, they have said that on their roadmap is to re-release a lot of the older initial wave kits because they've improved so much. They've gotten so much better at building and figuring out how models go together. I built a box of Nord Stalkers, and I was ready to claw my eyes out. And then I moved over and did some 100 Kingdoms models, an absolute ton of 100 Kingdoms stuff. And just the difference in assembly between them was crazy. It was night and day. Those militia literally almost shake the box, and out pops 12 militia models. You just literally clip body halves, leg halves, arms, legs, and you just start gluing it together. You don't have to sit there and fiddle with anything. They're so good. They're so well done. So yeah, built a absolute ton of 100 Kingdoms so that I could get a 2K list on the board. Almost there. I have a couple more. I have to build another mercenary crossbowman and something else, but I'm almost at the 2K I need to be at in order to field it. But I'm still concentrating more on the Nords. I have to build the Sea Giant is going to get done today. That's my goal. And after that, it's Berzarks and Ulfhidnar. So, yeah, but got a lot of stuff built. And, of course, I have to find time in all of that stuff to build the Sinister Six. And, yeah.
The burden you bear, Bill.
But to dovetail into why I did all that was in my battle, played 2 2,000-point games, and I know I only listed one, but that's because I'm a failure. Let me see. 2 great games. I will save the discussion of them for after dark because nobody wants to hear that here. But 2 very strange wins. 2 very strange wins for the Nords. They're such a weird faction to play because they're glass cannons without the cannon, and it's just so odd how they win games. But they're fun. They're strategic and fun. So I enjoyed that. We did play a game of AOS. We played a send-off game where it was no rules, just right. It was a lot of fun. It was 2,000 points of Daughters for me, 2,400 points of Stormcast. And from that point, we were just making it up as we went along. There was Gargants on the shelf. So we're like, well, let's each bring in a Gargant. So we were like, okay. And then I had on the app, I had the Gargant, I had it unlocked. He did not. So we were like, okay, you know what? They hit on 4s, they save on 4s, and we just played them as basic as it was a hilarious game. People were just walking by going, what are you doing? And we're saying goodbye to AOS, waiting for the new version. So who cares? We're not playing for points or anything. There's no title on the line here.
You weren't paying for pink slips?
Yeah, exactly. No.
Let's start doing that again. Let's play anti AOS. You know what I'm saying? ANTE AOS.
Yeah.
Let's commit. Let's do Iron Man tournaments. Model gets killed. Put on a little tiny anvil. Get a little tap on a hammer. Break it. And you can bail. You can throw the towel in at any point if it's too much for you. Your opponent gets the win. You go into the next round with just what you have left. Let's go. Let's celebrate our like late stage capitalism with the worst kind of conspicuous consumption.
Well, people were talking about doing that with Spearhead, right? Since it's like one box gets you the entire force that you're going to need for that particular army, right? So playing for slips on Spearhead, I mean, it's only $140-ish, right?
Yeah.
That and time and effort and all those things you put into building and painting it.
Yeah.
So why not play for slips? I mean,
oh Jesus. Oh God.
I think there's something bananas about there. There's something like deliciously like WWE about that. Just the nonsense of the spectacle of like playing for slips or playing to like break models.
Oh my God.
I'm not gonna lie. If there was an LGS where you paid $20 to come spectate, I would pay $20 to go see that.
All proceeds go to everyone who loses their armies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, why not? Why not top 2 get a new army off the shelf? Why
Oh.
Let's do this.
How about bottom 3 get their armies back?
Yeah.
I mean, they get a new box, right? They get a spearhead, but
you have to do it again, but and try again
but
next Saturday.
Admittedly, I'm also fueled by like Schadenfreude. It sustains me. So maybe don't take this a very serious suggestion.
The Rampant Capitalist Podcast.
Listen, don't you think a YouTube channel where that was the format of battle reports would make money? Don't you think you could quit your job if you had a YouTube channel where you pitted people against each other and every time a model died, it got smashed to pieces?
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
And just watching the human drama of that play out, it'd be like a mid 2000s MTV reality show level, cringe, hypnotic awfulness.
It's the train wreck you cannot stop watching. Yeah.
It's Rock of Love. Yeah.
I'll talk about this a little bit later, Ulf, but in terms of the escalation of destroying the models, then you have to find new and interesting ways to destroy them on
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You can have votes, you can have audience polls, you want to see Archeon get fed into a literal meat grinder, and ground up, or you want to see him get hit with a sledgehammer,
I would bring my Ninja blender just to put that model in it.
It's the freaking Mojo verse over here. Come on.
See? It was not a long walk to get you guys on board with this.
No, you got my vote. Yeah.
And Bill's got the models. Let's go.
I have a shed.
An entire shed.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
You could sell it as spring cleaning,
Sure.
Just moving stuff out the shed.
Okay.
But I like what you were saying though about playing with like lighter rules and just playing for fun. Because honestly, what you were just saying reminds me of how we all played back in 2015 and the 4-page AOS 1 days.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which I miss. Like I would still play 4-page rules like today if my friends would get on board with that. I think there was something so beautiful about it, and it ties into stuff we'll talk about later about why AOS community is different than other communities. But I love any story about. Oh, so then we just did this. Why? Because it's fun. Shut up.
Yeah.
What's the harm?
Yeah. Who was harmed in the making of this game? Nobody.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yep.
Kudos to you for doing it.
We had fun. We were just, and what was funny was there was like 3 other games going on. A 40K game, an AOS game, and I think the other guys the table was just choked with terrain, so I think it was Infinity. All the people that were coming by were coming to our table because we were the ones who were just laughing and just having a great old time while everyone else had that, look on their face of sheer concentration and I must win this game, otherwise my Saturday is ruined. Whatever. If that's what you enjoy, do it. Okay, so on that note, Josh, I noticed that in the battle section of the agenda you put, I'll let you read it.
Yeah, I didn't play any games. I had a situation where we had this, shall we say, child sex predator who was out on warrant status trying to evade capture, and we got some significant DNA evidence back, and so I was working hand in hand with the sheriff's office to look at getting him into custody, which we did. I was able to get the grand jury to indict him on Thursday, and I have him held pending disposition on this case because we had that hearing on Friday. So
well done.
This guy's looking up to 61 years in prison.
Nice.
Hate to be bleak about it, but given the facts of this case, if I have my way, he'll die in custody one way or another.
There you go.
Either he'll age out or he'll do it himself. So that's what I did.
That was battle that paid off. Ulf, do you have any games you want to talk about?
Do you want me to follow that?
Well, you can lighten it up a little.
Yeah. Bring us back up. Well, bring us back up.
Okay, I played an MCP game with Shadowlands Daredevil, and I guess he knew what the church was doing to those kids. I don't know. How am I supposed to tie into that? We've been playing MCP around here lately. Obviously, for you guys, battle is since the last time we talked, but since this is the first time we're talking, we play a lot of Commander Magic. We play EDH here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Nice.
Casual only. Like if you're, if you rock up here with a $3,000 deck with a bunch of combos, like, okay, great, you can have your win over there by yourself, and we're going to be over here playing this game, which is fun. So we do that, and then we were playing MCP yesterday. We had some folks over in the morning. We threw down some MCP. I was playing my Criminal Syndicate under Shadowlands Daredevil.
Okay.
Which, while I wait for our new Overlord Electro to drop, is my faction until I get back to Spider Foes. And that's really fun. I don't know if you guys have played Criminal Syndicate under Shadowlands.
Yeah.
But he is great. I love his leadership. I think he's better than Kingpin. Or suits me better than Kingpin, I should say.
Sure.
I know Kingpin gets all the notoriety in Syndicate, but I think the fact that Shadowlands' leadership procs on multiple attacks per turn makes him like the inverse Guardians,
Yeah.
like the lesser effective rerolls, but more frequent rerolls. So if you play into that, it's dynamite. It unlocks scenario play in a way that's really satisfying. So I tend to run a lot of Ultron 2. Clearly with him with the drones.
You betcha, yeah.
Are dynamite with that. So yeah, we played. I played against a buddy of mine, his Uncanny X-Men with New Bishop, which was terrifying. New Bishop is a lot like the Wu-Tang Clan in that he ain't nothing to F with. And that's what I appreciate about him. So we played a game. We were playing Demons and Demons Downtown and one of the other ones. I forget what the other crisis was. Played through it, went into round 4 with me on 13 and him on about 5.
Oh boy.
So I ran away with the scenario points by just bullying him with all the best Criminal Syndicate characters, which equates to Rhino and Lizard, who are my lovely boys.
Those are a dream team right there.
Listen, they are derpy, and their cards do not show how good they are. But if I have a chance to put Paul Giamatti on the table, I'm putting Rhino on the board. And if you guys remember that there was a brief moment where Paul Giamatti appeared as Rhino in an actual Marvel movie.
Okay.
It was in the second Andrew Garfield Spider-Man.
Oh, okay. I did not.
He was in like a post-credit scene where like for 2 seconds, Paul Giamatti's on screen, has a shaved head and a like crown of thorns tattoo around his head. And I was like, what the F is this? And then he showed up as Rhino, and I was like, oh no. Oh, what if, look what they did to my boy, Godfather style. Look how they massacred my boy. So, Put Rhino on the table. He ran around, did his thing. One of the most mobile characters in the game, weirdly.
Oh yeah.
Leaps all over the place like a freak. He's always where you don't want him to be. He's shouting, "We're not drinking Merlot," and then he's like beating people to death.
You betcha.
And I love him. So we've been playing that. One of my favorite things about MCP, and especially this kind of game, is every single model matters. Mm-hmm. You're not like, Chain Rasp number 24 died. Well, we'll miss you, friend. No, nobody cares. You'll be back the next rally phase,
Exactly.
But in MCP, you're like invested. You're like, I have Shadowlands Daredevil. He's so brooding and moody, and he's just sitting there flipping his dyed hair out of his eyes, muttering "can't rain" all the time, And then meanwhile, he has this like colorful gang of weirdos in like Rhino and Lizard and Mysterio running around doing like this crazy nonsense. And you're like, this has personality from like top to bottom. This game, it has stakes and personality and vibrancy. And you're not like, okay, here come my Volkites, and they're 70 men in diapers. They're gonna get you.
Yeah.
And that does happen, but it's not quite as dynamic as a game like MCP. So for me, Battle has just been all MCP lately.
Nice.
That's such a great game. And so you're going to pivot from Criminal Syndicate into Sin 6 now?
Oh, I've been waiting. I've been playing nothing but Spider Foes and A-Force, my two favorite affiliations since I got into MCP.
Nice.
The Criminal Syndicate is like a new direction for me because I want to play Lizard and Rhino in some new combinations. But yeah, absolutely. Sinister Six, like just give me Scorpion when we're ready.
Yeah.
You don't want to go too hard. Let it breathe for a minute. Give me Scorpion, then we're good.
Well,
until New Mutants comes out, and then when New Mutants comes out, I'm throwing everything else into the trash and just playing New Mutants. Because Warlock and Sunspot, Magic, we already have half the team.
Yeah.
Give us the rest. New Mutants is my favorite book, favorite comic, favorite characters, favorite artists. The Sienkiewicz covers are pieces of art.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That changed the way I looked at comics. I grew up in New Jersey once we came to the States. So I'm an immigrant. In New Jersey was where the Joe Kubert Art School is. I don't know if you guys know what that is.
Yeah.
But Joe and Adam Kubert, right? From comics. So their art academy is like a couple of miles from where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of these guys like I've met them.
Nice.
Right. And like Bill Sienkiewicz used to teach there and stuff. So like there's a big connection to the comics world that was right around the corner. So like the art part of it was very front and center for me in my comic book journey as a kid. So to see that stuff make it to the tabletop finally in a game is just like so satisfying. It feels like weirdly vindicating.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If that's not too arrogant to say, but like you're like, yes, these characters do matter, and like I'm not one to scream, blood for the blood god or wah when I'm playing these games. I think that performative stuff is nonsense. No apologies to anyone who disagrees with me. You are wrong and I'm correct. So in my opinion, anyway, nobody came here to listen to you yell. You know what I'm saying? It's a game store.
Yeah. Oh God, please. Yes.
And that's obviously in good fun. Like, I don't care if people do it in their own homes. Do what you got to do. Do what makes you happy. But my point being, I don't do get into the performative stuff, but I will be referring to myself and others as like self and self-friend. Once the New Mutant stuff drops, I will be speaking like Warlock from top to bottom.
I love it. Oh, we're going to lose you as a person, but gain you as an entity. Nice.
Yes.
All right. Are you good?
Yep.
All right, let's take a quick break, and then we will roll into our lore section where we're going to talk a little bit about the new AOS. We're going to talk a little about the other reveal show. I love how they split this up. I have some interesting opinions about the reveal shows. Probably save that for after dark, but I'll give you a preview and lore. And then we are going to turn the floor over to Ulf for a rather interesting discussion, I think, about some things that we've brought up in the past. And if you think it has anything to do with femstodies, you're right. So we'll take a quick break and be right back.
And now for something completely different.
Okay, so here goes. Let's talk about the lore, and the lore meaning the new AOS reveal show. I've got to start off with, I hate the new format for the reveal videos. They're just terrible. Just terrible. There's no interactivity. It's just, a guy playing a trailer and then throwing it over to Phil Kelly and two random studio people. Although I do want to make one shout out. Yay, go Jimbo, who is now Jimbo from the old Jimbo and Mitzi show, Mitzi and Jimbo show. He is now a GW employee. He is now working on AOS. And from my point of view, that's a wonderful thing because that man has a big brain when it comes to AOS and making it fun as opposed to just, here's our rules, shut up and play. Definitely glad to see Jimbo on the team over there at GW. Yay, local boy makes good, except he's from England and not local at all. The new AOS, the reveals for both the Stormcast Eternal, that trailer is just off the hook. And then the Skaven trailer was, when I saw those Giselles, my jaw nearly hit the floor. I was so happy. It's almost going to make me want to do Skaven again.
Hey, back off.
I know. I
have to say with the new format for the reveals and everything where they, cut over and then we just want to see models. Like we don't necessarily want to hear the director's commentary that no one ever listened to on the DVDs, right? Be at the forefront of what should be. These are the models that play with the rules that we just talked to you about online over the course of the last month and a half, right?
Yep.
I mean, the Skaven are blowing me away. And like they were able to update them without sacrificing what they are. Everything is still rough and grimy and dirty. And like the Giselles, as you bring up, right? It's just a glow up from the previous model. Yep. It's like the natural next step. I mean, the major transformation for any model in this was the rat ogres. Which
my gosh.
They took from ball and socket monstrosities that, God, they're so horrible, to mini storm fiends, which is, and that tracks a lot. Some people were a little critical of that, but I mean, storm fiends are rat ogres with additional technology, right? So let's get the rat ogres out there so that way we can see what the next stage is in terms of evolution
becomes.
Absolutely beautiful models. I'm excited for a giant chain gun kill Stormcast model, but I'm in it for it. What do you think, Ulf?
I love the new rat ogres. They are one of the only models that got worse when they went to plastic. Right, I think we can all agree. Apart from the Island of Blood ones,
yep,
which were fantastic. But they the metal ones, gorgeous. Right, I played Skaven back in like 4th and 5th edition Fantasy Battle, and the plastic rat ogres were such a travesty. And these new ones are dynamite. They're so good. Every single one of them looks like it should be like the monster that's like the star of its own little horror film. They're
yeah.
And I think what's really interesting about the Skaven in particular is they're not AOS-ified, if you know what I mean. Like so many other lines went through this AOS-ification that I loved. I thought it was so appropriate. Like specifically high elves being replaced with Lumineth, right?
Yeah.
Like the high elves were gorgeous. Loved the high elves in Fantasy Battle, but they were stuffy. They were rigid-looking poses. They were, and of course ranking them up, and they can only exist in like 2.5 dimensions because of how they have to rank up and all that jazz. But when they went to the Lumineth, they didn't just like make the robes a little swirlier or like make the spears stick out a little more. They went with like this whole new direction that was like obviously like this is the new high elves, right? Not the same as the old high elves. Soulblight Gravelords is another one.
Yes.
Where the new Soulblight Gravelords are gonzo compared to the old vampire counts.
Oh yeah.
But gonzo in a really great way. And the ghouls also, right? The Flesh Eater Courts being an uplift of ghouls is fantastic. And it's so interesting to me that the Skaven, like you said, these Giselles, if you had put these Giselles out in 2003, people would have just been like, wow, these Giselles look amazing, but they're still recognizably Giselles.
Right.
And the design direction just hasn't changed that much for Skaven. I love that. Because if you would try to make Skaven even more gonzo than they already were, like what does that look like, Well, it loses the character of it, in my opinion.
I agree. It'd be cartoony at that. I think maybe they were able to do that with like Gits, particularly with the squigs, how just bonkers they are. Skaven were they're mad scientists / crazy wizards / Frankenstein, like they're everything already. All you can do there is just update the sculpt so they're a little bit more dynamic, keep the spirit of it. There's nothing there that has significantly changed, and not like they did the big glow up with the Stormcast, right?
And you'll be able to use these new models up against with your old models, and they're not going to look out of place.
Yeah.
And they're just glow ups for what we already have, and infinitely better kits. I guarantee to build.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, it's like Skaven were an AOS army before AOS existed, and they didn't take that as a negative and change it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, because like take a look at for example, Fire Slayers. We had Slayers, but Fire Slayers are not Dwarf Slayers. You know, that's like a whole other animal, and it's a great thing. I love it. It's my favorite army. I'm one of the 8 people who care about it, and I'm not going to apologize. But that army is fantastic. But it got AOSified. You know, they took Slayers and they're like, let's AOSify these. And I love that GW something I will never ever say is they showed some restraint in this with the Skaven by not pushing them to 11, by going, no, they're fine. Let's just make them look cooler with today's technology and model building sensibility. I couldn't love them anymore if I tried.
Yep. And I got to say, what they've done with the Stormcast, you know, first of all, the old chamber updates, the prosecutors and what's his name's, they just look phenomenally good. Yeah. They're a great update. Cannot wait to throw away all my old ones. You know, I make light of it, but I am literally going to take those prosecutors and I will probably put them in a blender or something, because I hated building them. I hated transporting them. I hated playing with them. They were just so fiddly, and these new ones just look so bonkers good. So I'm just jazzed across the board for all of these models. And then the rule set, what they've revealed about the rules, and not going to wax poetic about these. We all can go to the website and look. But I think they have really started to address everything that was a major concern with AOS as it stands currently. Which, you know, granted, we're at the end of an edition. Things have been loosey-goosey for a while. So I'm not going to take points away from GW for being in the position they're in now. But it bodes well to me that they're throwing the General's Handbook in that box, and as well as that Jade book that's going to give you all of the spear point stuff for every faction across the board. So now you can start playing with everything all at once. Just absolute knocking it out of the park. If they can, I've said it before, but if they can manage the power creep the same way they're doing it in 10th edition 40K, they will literally be in this position that GW has never been in before, where they not only have top of the line industry leading models, along with rule sets that are absolutely supportive of a great game. I'm not going to say the best rule sets out there, because that's an opinion at best, but they're going to be in a place where everything they have is hitting on all cylinders. And wow, just, you know, buy your stock now, people. Buy the stock now. It's only going up. So do we need to cover more about the new AOS?
There's a couple of things I'd like to get your opinion on or discuss.
Please.
Like, So one of the things, like, I agree generally with what you're saying. I think the player experience seems to be forward in this design process, right? They're making things easier. They're doing really simple things like color coding stuff in a way that's legible. Like the save pie piece is green, you know, on these War Scroll cards and stuff like that. Like just little quality of life things. But then there's stuff they're doing that, like, I don't know. I have to take exception with some of these things on it, but of course I haven't seen the full rule book, so, you know, what do I know? But at first blush, like, the change to formation seems weird to me. What are you guys' take on the half-inch formation range?
You know, when it comes to the coherency stuff, and to me, that's a mechanic of play that can be abused by players who are seeking a crappy advantage. You know, kind of a I got you, haha, advantage, as opposed to I play better than you. So I don't, you know, until I see it in total, like you said, I won't be able to really throw out a great opinion. But to me, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still, you know, paying for the sins of the 40 skinks in a triangle, you know, across the middle of the board kind of play. But you know, in keeping the formations tight, we still get 3-inch engagement range on everything, right? We don't have to measure each model like I'm trying to shove the 25 mils in, adjust the right angle so that way I can measure it, that kind of thing. You know, so I can see what you're saying, Ulf. I think we're going to need to play with it first.
Yeah, it's definitely a way to rein in that 3-inch ability. Otherwise, you'd get back to those old days of long strings of blood letters going across the board and denying everything. So.
Sure, and I think that's kind of, you've both kind of talked about around what I was thinking about was that, you know, restricting the coherency range to 1/2 inch, but also giving everyone 3-inch reach. It to me, it seems like a bit of an overcorrection, I'll be honest, because we're also not reinforcing as much as we used to, right?
That's true.
So we're not going to be able, via the reinforcement thing, to even make that many complex shapes anymore with units, right? You can't make the same complicated like L shapes and whatever with 20 chain rasps with 3-inch reach and 1/2 inch coherency as you could with 30 chain rasps with, you know, 1-inch reach but 1-inch coherency, if you follow what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The way that you can arrange those models physically as like a cloud of interconnected models, you're only going to be able to make like kind of oblong egg shapes roughly, or like a big line, right?
Yeah, rectangles and lines. Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, well, okay, I get that with the smaller objective zones, right? Going to the 40K size, the like 7 and whatever 3/8 inch thing.
Yeah.
Love that. It interacts really well with that, in my opinion. But now I'm wondering, like, what's the difference between movement trays, rank and flank, and a lozenge shape that is not on movement trays? You know what I'm saying?
It is true. It is true. And I bet you some of the first little widgets we're going to see come out are going to be 5, 10, 15, and 20 man ovals, you know? Yeah.
Oh, precisely. And so for me, that's not the big problem. That's like just how the game is going, right? We can all see that.
Sure.
And we all understand what the purpose of it is. The purpose of it is to reduce the fussiness of it.
Yep.
To make it easier to tell who's fighting who, right? No problem there. You know, I play Fire Slayer, so I have models that have a 3-inch, a 2-inch, a 1-inch, and a 1/2 inch reach all on the same model. You know, in a magma droth.
Yep.
Like that thing's lashing out in all directions, but none of it makes sense. So I get it. I love it. I love that part of it. But here's the thing that I'm nervous about. You said as long as they keep the same design direction, right, Bill? Like as 10th edition has, as they control the bloat and so on, the power creep. Like, what happens when they decide that an army has to break that rule? Yeah. What happens when they're like, oh, this has extended formation or whatever they call it? Like, I think we're going to enter an era of board position arms race, the same way we had a shooting arms race at the end of 1st edition.
Yep.
And that to me is like a concern that I'm looking at going down the road, being like, well, but what happens when they decide that what are the Stormcast dudes who come down the lightning and do mortal wounds? Annihilators? Is
Aggressors.
that their name? No, aggressors are 40K.
Yeah, no.
The Annihilators.
Annihilator, yeah.
Annihilators, okay, yeah. So what happens when they say like, well, look, 3 Annihilators with 1/2 inch reach is a teeny little triangle, right? It's like it's the size of like a $1 bill folded in half. It's like a tiny little guy. Yeah. What happens when they decide that 3 inches isn't enough for that? And then maybe those guys have a 1-inch coherency to allow them to spread out more. And then what happens if that then starts this other guy that has to do this in response? And then I think we're off to the races of having a formation issue. I don't know. And maybe that's me being a little cynical or afraid of that. But
see, I am hopeful that they have learned from the mistakes of the past and they aren't going to do things like that. We all know that as different armies come out and they try to flavor them differently, that they sometimes resort to stuff like that. I'm just hoping that they have a document over there at GW that nobody but the designers get to see, and it has the ground rules. You cannot do this. You cannot allow this. So I'm kind of hoping they have that document. You know, I know the guys from Atomic Mass talk about, you know, the Will Schick and Pagani talk about, they have a scope document that they use, and it's no character can ever have this combination of abilities. No character can have this set of numbers because it would skew the basic design philosophy. And I'm just hoping GW has something like that that gives their game design team and their faction designers a a bubble that they can work within. That's what I hope.
Well, from your mouth to Roundtree's ears, you know what I'm saying?
I wonder if he listens.
Yeah, right. Probably that's why we never get the Pleasant for Plastic stuff, Bill.
That could very well be.
You know, there's with all the different modules, which is one of my favorite parts of what they're doing in AOS 4. I'm interested to see how these things will interact. You know, we're talking about, you know, the coherency and all that, but then we have to look at the new terrain rules, right? And how you have things like, I can't remember what it's called. It's the 5th one where you can't end on it.
Yeah.
And how that's going to affect like hordes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be a matter of playing with all facets of it to tease sort of the ends of it to see where it could go. I mean, I understand your sort of, I wouldn't call it cynicism, but maybe apprehension of what GW has been prone to do in the past, Ulf, where they're just like, and this one breaks the rule, right? Like Seraphon always breaks the rules.
Yeah.
You know, so we'll have to let it play out. And I mean, maybe we can have a little bit of outcry and hopefully rein them back in if there's anything that goes that way.
Yeah, I think games are at their best when, and not just this, not just AOS, but any game, when every lever that you can pull on has equal weight. If that makes sense, every rules lever.
Yes.
Like when movement is the same, has the same impact as shooting, which has the same impact as close combat, which has the same impact as magic. And I feel like AOS for so long has been like movement trumps everything.
Right.
Truth.
You know, if you have an army that moves, it makes up for it covers a multitude of sins, and it makes up for every other weakness. And you could have an army that just slaps you know what in combat and just takes names and kicks butts. But if they can't get to where it's going, okay, like this doesn't matter. It's completely irrelevant.
It's the historical Stormcast problem. You know, it's once they have done their deployment shenanigans, whatever flavor it is, they are pretty much where they're going to be. And with very few exceptions. And okay, but you're pricing them as an elite army, but you are playing them as a very stock army. And that just leads to an unfun experience. So
everyone is a Hearthguard berserker.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting that, you know, some of the key mechanics of your game you forget when you design your factions. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, and I'm hoping that, you know, one of the very shining examples of getting it right has been the 10th edition faction balance, where as these books come out, it's not like, oh, well, you know, Mechanicum just came out, so there's no playing against them for 3 months. And they're not doing that. That's not being seen. So I'm hopeful in a way. I mean, I am truly hopeful. I am really looking forward to this. I'm hoping that they knock this one out of the park and they really get it good.
Don't misunderstand me. I'm excited AF for this. Like I'm looking forward to it. I'm stoked. Like I got 80 plus Fire Slayers sitting around ready to go. Like I got more Heat Knights of Slanesh than I probably should. You know, it's fantastic. I love AOS. I've loved it from day one. I'm excited, but I'm also like trepidatious about some of these things because you play enough games long enough and you start to develop, like, you know, you get this, like, you can't see the matrix exactly, but it's close, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you can see, like, okay, this is a movement centered thing. This is a magic centered thing. This is a shooting centered thing. Yeah. And I was like, whenever I see movement being the issue historically with any miniatures game, that's been the thing that like breaks it. Yeah. In my experience is, you know, a whole army that flies, or a whole army that, you know, like, you know, Nighthaunt never has a problem getting where it needs to go. It just like picks a point and you're like, great, that's where I am now. You know, and GW has always overvalued, in my opinion. And again, my opinion, take it with a grain of salt, not a game developer, just been playing this game since, you know, the Clinton administration. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. But GW has always overvalued defensive tech, right? Things with a high armor save have always costed more points than they should. Right. Things with an invuln safe have always costed more points than they should. Things that shrug off wounds have always been overvalued. So much so that they're like, well, if they shrug off wounds, they can't also be fast. And then you wind up with, you know, the last 5 years of Fire Slayers, where you're just like, okay, if I can get to you, nothing on earth will withstand this army.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, I will one turn like anything in the game. Problem is, getting to you is a man-sized ask. You know, like
well, we can't. Yeah, you need 6 turns to get there in a 5-turn game. So,
Yeah,
Damn it.
and it breaks my heart to be like, I don't want to see the same thing happen again. But some of the stuff I saw in the reveals makes me think they're really paying attention to what the community's been saying, like the changes to what the endless spells, the endless prayers, and such.
Yeah,
love it.
Yep.
Love it. Give me more of that. Put that dude in charge of making more decisions. Like whoever decided this.
Whoever said I can punch a spell should get a raise.
Same guy that did I can punch terrain. Your faction terrain can get blowed up now. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
God bless you, sir. You are doing the Lord's work.
but one of the things that gives me hope is that time moves on and there are new people on the design staff. There are younger people on the design staff. And as an old person, I will tell you that carrying the weight of all these biases forward, it skews my judgment. It has to skew a game designer's judgment. He's like, well, this has always worked, so we'll just keep doing that in AOS 4. And some of these newer people are coming on saying, no, that really doesn't work. Let's do it this way. Oh, okay. And I think they're starting, the new generation is starting to hold more sway. So I'm hoping that bodes well for the game.
Yeah, I mean, cough, battle shock, cough, cough.
Yeah.
Right? Like psychology has been a part of this game and shouldn't have been for the past 10 years.
Yes, thank you.
All these games, like, it does nothing.
Right. It's an annoyance and a time waster. So
yeah. It does nothing until it does too much. You might as well just roll a d6 and be like, okay, on a 6 you take this amount, like whatever. It's just random.
Yeah, until you design an army around that mechanic that is just at its core broken. Yeah. So
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, there hasn't been a Night Lords list in 40K yet that makes an ounce of sense.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
And Hedonites should have been the prime example of this in AOS. And like, you guys, I'm sure listen to Warhammer Weekly, right?
Oh yeah.
Watch that show. Yeah. So, I mean, when Vince says, they can't understand how to make this mechanic work because it's a little too highbrow. I mean, paraphrasing him. I'm like sitting there slow clapping while like trying to paint, like agreeing with him that like these kind of things are great on paper and in like some sort of ethereal design space and what ifing.
Sure.
But then when it comes to like rules implementation, you're like, this is clunky. Like,
well, and especially, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it just doesn't do what one envisions it ought to do,
Yeah, and I think part of their biggest problem is having their playtesting in-house. So all your bias is also in-house. And you look at things and the designer is right there next to you all the time saying how great this mechanic is. So you just are like, yeah, that's great. So, and then when it gets out into the open world, people are like, yeah, no, that's really bad.
Yeah, we have always been at war with Oceania. There is no war in Oceania, right? Like your 1984 game design logic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm hopeful for it. I'm very excited for it. I'm really looking forward to playing it. My armies have been in the lower end of how the rules interact with them for a while now. So hoping to see a little bump.
Yeah. I like
but it is what it is. The models are dope. The community is amazing.
Yeah.
And that's the number one reason to play this game, in my opinion, is the community.
Yep.
Like the AOS community is, in my personal opinion, hands down the best miniatures community in terms of being like cool and relaxed being the main thing, and welcoming.
Yeah.
And not taking themselves too, seriously. Insert profanity here, seriously.
Yes, it's the truth. It is a great group of people. I've really not seen any really bad apples. So anyway, let's move on to the other reveal show. Mm-hmm. And we're going to gloss over this one because it's not AOS. There was some Legions Imperialis, which I'm going to hit real fast. And it's a new campaign book for Tallarn. And it looks really good because they're extending the campaign system from the Great Slaughter book to include more ways of expanding and making a campaign, as well as a whole raft of new models coming out. So, yeah, absolutely phenomenal. On the 40K side, we're getting, what's his name? Sisters of Battle, and what was the other one they revealed? Gosh darn it, I don't remember.
The Sisters of Battle do get a Canoness with Jump Pack.
Yeah, Canoness with Jump Pack, as well as the Codex, and there's another faction that came out. God dang it. Wasn't AdMech, was it?
No, AdMech's already out.
Yeah. I forgot who else was coming out, but anyway, somebody else is coming out too.
Yeah, 40K is a dead game. Who cares?
Yeah, it's pretty much dead.
Can I throw in an opinion here?
Sure, please.
Okay, all right. These guys don't plug their After Dark section enough, but like go sign up on Patreon, like go support these guys, get access to the After Dark. If you want to know why, you can get a taste of it today because I will be ranting about Legionis Imperialis in a way that I cannot even preview here because I got thoughts and you're gonna hear about them. Okay, it's gonna be like what is it? Festivus. We're gonna have our grievances. We're gonna air the grievances.
Love it.
Get on the Patreon, support these guys. The show is fantastic. You listen to it already for free. Pardon my French. Get off your butts, and you can have one chalupa less a month and support these guys. You know what I'm saying?
And you get After Dark.
Yeah, and you get After Dark, right? Exactly. Awesome. I'm gonna shill for you because you guys don't do it enough, in my opinion. Oh.
Well, hit that like button and subscribe.
Yeah, there you go. You didn't do it in a performative welcome back fam voice though. You gotta really commit.
I gotta work on that.
Yeah, air horns. Get that.
My presentation needs to be better.
Give them the old Ash thing where it's like, because Patreon helps put food in my kids' belly.
Oh, I love that.
Oh my God.
Ash, I love you so much. Oh God. Oh my Lord.
You want them sympathy dollars? Is that...
In terms of what I've seen some people doing for, like and subscribe on YouTube, yeah, I'll take Ash's version any day. Oh my God.
I mean, hell, we're all just digitally holding up signs on the side of the highway anyway, right?
It's so weird. Everybody, I don't know the psychology of the please hit like and subscribe. Every YouTuber I watch does it.
More to come.
And it just, from us. And I just sit there and I'm like, people are going to inherently like and subscribe if they like your work. Shilling them to try to get them to do that, I just wonder if that... I literally fast forward through those parts of all the videos.
Mm-hmm. Well, wonder no more, Bill, because that just sounded like you just did a segue into the next section.
I am, and I'm going to turn it over to Josh. Josh?
Yeah, so after we had the discussion about the female custodes, and Bill and I had imparted our opinions, Ulf reached out to me, and I don't have his CV in front of me, so he can introduce his own creds. But being someone who works in behavioral psychology and help me gain a much greater understanding of the psychological social phenomena that surrounds the kind of behavior that we see, because we talked about sort of I'll just say it's sort of the fashy speak that we see out of 40K, where like, don't you dare let any women into my club, versus what you see in like AOS, where like they put out female Stormcast and everyone's like sick, right?
Yeah.
And so after Ulf had approached me and educated me quite significantly, I just thought it'd be a great idea to have him on the show, and he's gracious enough to be here and give us his expertise. So Ulf, I'm going to turn it over to you. Maybe a little bit of your background before you get into, some really good education.
All right. So yeah, thanks guys. And happy to be here. Happy to be talking about this. It's like my bread and butter at work. So as far as what I do, I'm a clinical supervisor and recently, a quality control manager of a behavioral therapy company. So we provide what's called ABA therapy, applied behavioral analysis therapy, which is a form of therapy used to improve the lives and improve the function of people with developmental disabilities. Most often it's used for individuals who have an autism diagnosis or who are on the spectrum. I would prefer, for the purpose of this conversation, if we could refrain from using the phrase autistic people. Mm-hmm. If you guys don't mind. It's a small enough of a change, but that is a phrase that is, not complimentary and mm-hmm. not considered quite acceptable anymore.
Sure.
Because it reduces them to their diagnosis. Mm-hmm. So we would say individuals, who have a diagnosis of, or, whatever. So we work primarily with people with developmental disabilities, like I said, and it's not necessarily psychology so much as it is behavioral science, meaning we deal with the how of people's behaviors more so than we deal with the why. Mm-hmm. right? Psychology concerns itself a lot with why, the underpinnings behind actions, thoughts, and opinions, etc. Right? They don't necessarily concern themselves with the how so much. My branch of behavioral therapy deals with the how. Like, what are the mechanics of making choices? What are the mechanics of repeating a behavior over and over? What are the mechanics of changing someone's behavior? So a good example that everyone can usually relate to that I use to explain this to people is smoking.
Okay.
Right? It doesn't matter why you started smoking if we're worried about the how do you stop smoking, right? The how you stop smoking is the same for everyone, right? There are different options you have, nicotine patch, nicotine gum, like these different things. Some people go to like hypnotherapy. There's different ways you can approach it, but they're divorced from the why of it, right?
Yeah.
So when you try to quit smoking, very few people go to a psychotherapist or a psychologist and then have themselves analyzed for the underpinnings of why at the age of 15 you started with an addictive substance, right? It doesn't necessarily relate anymore, right? Because you're a different person than you were when you started smoking 30 years ago, right? So now we're worried about the how. And that's a good analogy for kind of what we do, right?
Okay.
My gaming background is that I've been a gamer since the early 90s. I think I bought my first 40K model in like 1991 or something like that. Been playing RPGs and everything since then. I was a big BattleTech head back in the day. Quickly moved over to Warzone, pour one out for the best miniatures game ever written. And it's 900 aborted attempts to be like drag kicking and screaming out of obscurity. They just won't let it die, but anyway, moved on to other games and, AOS MCP at the moment. But I played 40K for a long time. I used to manage a game store. I've been in the 40K community forever. So Bill and Josh were talking, you guys were talking in the episode about the venom that was in the discourse going on right now in the 40K space, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah. And you guys were talking about, everyone asked the same question. Everyone goes, and it's rhetorical. And I know it's rhetorical. So, I'm not an idiot by saying this, but people are like, why do people react this way? How can it be this important that they'd be willing to be so, something to each other, right? And it's like, okay, we all understand that it's because that kind of content gets likes and clicks and views and upvotes and whatever metric you use, right? So it's kind of rhetorical. You guys are asking it because you're throwing your hands up, right? You're like, why do people do this? Not necessarily wanting an actual answer.
Right.
But there is an answer. And that's the thing I think that people don't realize is there's an answer beyond just, to get clicks, to get like watches and likes. And that falls squarely into behavioral science. Like, how do people do the things they do? How do they arrive at the place where this is the choice they're making?
Yeah.
And obviously your mileage may vary and every person's an individual and everyone, whether they like the term or not, is an individual person with their own, everyone's their own special snowflake in some way. No
I
two
knew
people
we were going to get there.
Yeah.
Listen, you have to, because you can't ignore the elephant in the room, right? That's a phrase, snowflake, that people have co-opted and done different things with and used to attack people. And that's terrible, in my opinion.
Yeah. Since when did something cool become denigrating? But
Literally
okay.
cool, right?
Yeah.
Right. Because it happens. That also has an answer, but the point is that these questions that you're asking, they really do have answers. You can plot it from A to B to C. It's called behavioral topography and escalation. So you can track the topography, the up and downs and the developments of a behavior over time and see how one thing becomes another thing. And that's kind of at the core of what we're talking about. So these guys who are like, this person's a snowflake and this and that. Well, yeah, okay. Like you said, it's something positive. We're all individual. And the reason I bring that up, just to circle back, is that everything I say now is not targeted at one person. Okay. So I don't want to hear people being like, but so-and-so is not that. So therefore you're wrong. Like, yeah, I know not everyone fits this mold, but when you're talking about large groups of people, they generally act a certain way and it's predictable. So when I say something, don't at me, don't like furiously take to Twitter and be like, but this guy, You know, this guy whose name is like Das Kommissar Goebbels 40K 6969, like he makes a really good point. Like, first of all, no, he doesn't. But secondly, I'm not talking about that particular jamoke. You know, I'm talking about all the jamokes in total. You know, everybody's seen as a group. So I want to just put that out there to begin with.
What's the proper term for a group of jamokes? Do we have one?
A flush.
A flush?
A clutch of jamokes.
All right, sorry, go ahead.
A flush, like going down the toilet, like a flush of jamokes. I guess we should just talk about, like, summarize the issue that everyone was, like, basically got themselves all in a lather about changes to something fictional, right? That's what we're talking about. People getting mad about something changing that doesn't actually exist. We can all agree on that, right? That's the crux of this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we have to look at something like, why do they care so much, right? And do they actually care so much? And the answer is probably they don't. One of the things that happens online that leads to this kind of like screaming vitriolic discourse is that it's not so much about the reaction it gets from people that they're oppositional to, right? So, like, you know, the whole dumb phrase that's making the rounds the last year or so, owning the libs, you know, I owned the libs on that, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody cares about that. There's nobody out there in the world, I must say this as a generalization, who puts something out and then is like, I got him, based purely on the fact that those other people are like, oh no, you got me. Right? The I got him sentiment comes from people who already agree with you going, you know what? You got him.
Yeah. The pat on the
That's
back.
where it comes from.
Yeah.
So what's happening is these people are, generally speaking, saying things that they understand will get a response from people who already agree with them, regardless of what the other side of the aisle is doing, right? Nobody in the history of internet discourse has shouted something racist or homophobic or awful online and then had the other person that they were directing it to go, yeah, you know what? You're right. Thank you for educating me. I'm straight now. At which point the bigot goes, got him. That has never happened. So there is no reward or validation coming from that quarter. It just doesn't happen. And to circle back, Bill, this is where the blocking things comes into effect. Someone bigoted or otherwise hateful shouts some nonsense. The person it's directed to just blocks them. That does not change the behavior of the person shouting nonsense.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because all you've done is reduce the pool of people they have to shout nonsense at, right? You've -1 to that number by taking yourself out of the equation. That doesn't change people's behavior because the pool of people that the reinforcement is coming from has stayed the same. All the other bigots are still there. So that's one of the reasons that this stuff doesn't tend to change in like, we would call it like an affect, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't tend to change the way that it's delivered. Right. So a good example of this would be like, let's say you're talking to your boss, right? And you want to have a disagreement with your employer. Well, you can approach that any number of ways. You can yell at them. You could be respectful. You could be overly formal. You could be overly casual. You could like soften the blow by like asking them if you could take them to lunch one day. You could like storm into their office while they're in the middle of a phone call. There's a million ways you can do that, right? And you're most likely to pick the way that you think is going to be most effective, right? Because you want something. You want a raise or time off or to discuss some workplace thing. So you're not going to choose a version that's likely to get you in Dutch with your boss, right? It's like online, when we talk about text-based online interactions, there's none of that.
Yeah.
You don't have a variety, a nuanced way to deliver your point. What you have is, 140 characters, previously.
Yeah.
and a platform of like-minded people who see the same exact format. Like there's only so much stuff you can put online. You can put text, GIFs, little videos. That's pretty much it, images, right? So you only have those couple of ways to communicate. And so based on that, you have to keep what we call escalating. If you want your message to land more, the content of the message can't be delivered differently, like the boss example, right? You can't like do it any differently than the tools you have available.
Right.
So that what ends up happening is you have to make the content of your message has to become more extreme to stand out. And that's how we get That's the big overview of how we get to that point of like why people suddenly can't just be like, oh, you know what? I didn't realize there were female custodies, which is a perfectly valid thing to say. Like, I didn't realize that. Oh, I don't like that. Like, okay, I disagree with you on that. Like, I like it. But, if someone said, I didn't realize that was a thing, I don't like it. Okay, great. I would respect that person's opinion. I mean, we can all agree with that, right? There's nothing wrong inherently with disliking a change to a narrative, right?
Sure, but I'm going to get more likes if I say, how can they do this? That's so stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the part that we can all sort of intuitively understand because we're all like internet savvy to one degree or another, right? We all understand that that's how that works.
Sure.
The escalation goes up and up and up, right? To me, the question is, why does it exist so pervasively in the 40K space and some other spaces, but yet it really doesn't exist in other places, right? I've yet to see it in AOS ever.
Yeah.
And AOS is not new, right? It's been out for was it like 8 years now?
Yeah.
Yep.
So what do you guys think? What's your opinion? Why does it not exist in AOS? And I'll throw this question to Bill specifically because Josh and I kind of discussed it a little bit already.
Actually, I would hesitate to say that from its inception, AOS was born of so much turmoil and so much vitriol that the people that came into it were the people that wanted to be there. If you've been around 40K long enough, like from the dark days, the beginnings, you have been drug along for the ride, whether you want to or not. AOS, you had the choice. And the people in it, if you ask me, the actual haters, the vitriolic people at the end times, I'm not going to say were the problem because there were a lot of people that were very upset for very valid reasons that their game system was going away to be replaced by a completely different game. And here the big bad company was saying, and you have to play it this way. And so I think what at the outset of the AOS community, it was the people that wanted to be there and were accepting of all the things that AOS entailed. And that's what I think.
And there's a lot of truth to that. You're right. There's a lot of that makes total sense. I would disagree on one point, but I'm also a fan of like playing dead games. I don't think that once a game stops being made, it's gone forever.
It isn't. So yeah.
So agree to disagree on that. But one of the things that changes is that 40K has been around longer, and it's literally just about time. 40K has a longer, we call it a reinforcement loop, right? Mm-hmm. So the idea becomes, I don't want to get into too much of the heavy duty stuff of like what constitutes reinforcement because we're not, you haven't hired me as a consultant to explain behavioral science to you, so we're not going to now have a 2-hour lecture about what's an establishing operation versus a motivating operation. But like, essentially, behavior that repeats itself, right, has to be what's called reinforced, right? Mm-hmm. You do something, there's an outcome you like, you're more likely to do the thing again. Very basic, right? You like having a paycheck, so you go to work, so you get another paycheck, so you go to work, so you get another paycheck.
That's a true statement.
But there's what's that?
That's a true statement.
Yeah. Your reinforcement for putting in hours at work is your paycheck. It's a good reinforcer, strong, keeps us going back and back, right? Online discourse, the reinforcement is clicks and likes and views and blah, 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 right? But there's a concept that I do want to bring up, which is called saturation. And the concept of saturation is this. After a while, if there is no variety in reinforcement, unless the reinforcement is very, very strong, like your paycheck that allows you to have a house and a roof over your head and feed your family, right? That's a very, very strong reinforcer. If you're dealing with something that's not that strong, you want variety in your reinforcement. As human beings, we're just wired that way. That's like some instinctive thing from caveman days. We don't want the same thing over and over. So what ends up happening is you reach what's called a saturation point, where the reinforcement is no longer strong enough to encourage the repetition of the behavior. If you're following me so far?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is where I said before I was going to talk about ice cream. Okay. So let's take a very typical example we can all relate to of reinforcement for like a kid, let's say doing chores or completing homework, right? Mm-hmm. So in a general sense, the behavior is listening to your parents and doing something that helps the family out, right? Take out the trash, do the dishes, whatever. Take your sister to soccer practice, do this thing that I'm asking you to do. And then the consequence of that is we're all going to go out for ice cream. right? Very typical, classic Norman Rockwell style behavioral loop, right?
Yeah.
Parent says, do the thing, ice cream. 1, 2, 3, boom, boom, boom. Why does that stay satisfying for so long? Because the concept of ice cream is not one scoop of Rocky Road each time delivered the same way. Ice cream is a concept that includes, like, you have a million flavors. Like this week, it's slightly different than last week, right? You go at a different time, you might go to a different ice cream place. So like while the reinforcement seems the same because we're just using a catch-all phrase like ice cream, the actual variety is huge. You have a tremendous amount of variety. So that reinforcer stays strong for a long, 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 long time.
Yeah.
So you don't reach saturation with it because it still stays fresh. So a reinforcer that gets saturated really quickly would be if I gave you the same exact ice cream every single time with no variety and no nothing, right? It was just like one scoop, plain vanilla, here you go. Are you going to be as motivated to work for that over the long term, right?
No, I'm not taking anyone to soccer practice. Screw you.
Yeah, because you don't care anymore. The reinforcement has reached saturation. You're done with it. You've had it up to here with it. You're saturated. Online, the reinforcement, the clicks and the likes and the views saturate like almost instantly because there is no variety in seeing your like numbers go up.
Right.
It's the same every time.
Yeah.
The little heart is now red and has a slightly higher number next to it, which is great initially, but it becomes really saturated over time very, very quickly. And the same thing with like YouTube likes and so on, right? So what we crave variety and reinforcement, and getting 1,000 likes on something or 1,000 views or 1,000 retweets loses its potency quick, especially because you might be getting 100 likes a day, right? You're just being inundated with this stuff. So the shine is off the apple very, very quickly, as the expression goes. So what happens is we as human beings are programmed behaviorally that we want more. We want more and new and different reinforcement. And then we get into what's called escalation. So what happens is in the online space, what's the next step up from seeing the little heart number go up? What would you say is the next step from that? If you want more than that, what are you looking for?
Comments.
Yeah.
Engagement. Yeah.
Yeah. You're looking for comments and interpersonal engagement. That's the next step up, right? So now you've escalated. You're no longer at likes. You're now at comments. So now what happens when the comments get saturated? When you're fed up with comments saying like, great job, bro. Congrats. Great video.
Controversy.
Yeah. Then you go into controversy is the next step up. And so now you've gone from I need to produce a tweet or a post that generates little heart reacts to now I need to make a post that generates discussion to now I need a post that has to generate argument. And then at some point, the people that you're arguing with stop arguing with you, right? That's the whole like don't feed the trolls thing. And when that happens, where do you go from there? Because that doesn't change what the person wants.
Alcohol.
Okay, well, sure. An extreme example, but let's keep it in the digital space.
Keep it online.
But no, he's not wrong.
Making my avatar drink alcohol online.
Okay, for sure. So where it goes from there is engagement with people about the people that have now left you behind.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right? Because you need to up it. You can't stay where you are and still get that dopamine hit of reinforcement. So then what happens with that is it gets like bigger and bigger and more intrusive and bigger because that's the only way to stand out. And in real life, we understand this a lot better. The online space is kind of really abstract, but if you think about in real life, this is like an addiction cycle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. The marijuana's not doing it anymore for you. So you try, whatever, you try MDMA. That's not doing it for you. Okay, well, maybe there's something that will do it for you. And you get saturated on the one experience, so you escalate to the next one. And that's how we get people who get addicted. That's how we get people who develop, and I'm not shaming anyone, but that's how we get people who develop really extreme kink, right? That's another expression of that. One thing doesn't satisfy anymore, doesn't reinforce you anymore, which is the same thing as saturation. So you escalate. You go to the next thing. And then you get people who then develop behavioral patterns that we no longer recognize as being reasonable. And I think that's the key thing. These aren't people being unreasonable. They're engaging in behavior that's unreasonable. Like the person themselves. And I forget which one of you said it, but like during the last podcast, one of you said like, well, I've never seen someone in person at the actual table who was like, throwing up a Heil Hitler salute while like playing their Black Templars, because that person isn't that way necessarily.
Yep.
But online, that's the tool they have to access the things they want, which is all that engagement.
Egads, you just broke my life down into little chunks that are scaring me.
Well, hey, then maybe some good can come out.
Hey,
I don't know.
we can help you.
But it's true, right? I mean, we all understand these things, but having them broken down makes us take a hard look at it, I think.
Bill and I had a podcast until Ulf broke it down for us, and now we went to therapy, and the podcast isn't there anymore.
But you can listen to my new podcast, Thief of Joy, at thiefofjoy.ulf.backslash.
Like, subscribe, become a Patreon member.
That
You'll
brings us
get
back
After
to what
Dark.
Bill was saying.
Oh,
Bill was saying, why do they always say like and subscribe and smash that bell? Why do they say that? Those are calls to action. That's a psychological term that is taught to people when they're trying to farm engagement. You need a call to action because it allows people to break the parasocial barrier and become part of the solution, except that doesn't last and eventually gets saturated also.
Sure.
So
it's a never-ending cycle. So honestly, then, how do you, if I'm sitting here, and I do not understand why these people are so upset, how do I actually engage with them in a way that's not going to perpetuate the nonsense?
Okay, so here's the answer to that, and this feeds into why AOS doesn't have this problem, which we are going to circle back to. I did not forget your point about that, even though we got sidetracked a little bit. There's something in behavioral science called a FEAB, F-E-A-B, which is an acronym that stands for Functionally Equivalent Alternative Behavior. So there's different types of these. There's something called a FEAB, a thing called a FERB. There's like all these. It's like acronym soup over there in behavioral science. So I'm not gonna get too far into the weeds. But an equivalent alternate behavior, right? We're gonna call it a FEAB. So a FEAB works like this: if a behavior is being fed, let's say, right, being reinforced, and they're going off the rails, and it's Femstodies came to my house and kicked my dog, and like I hate you, don't look at me, Dad, I hate you is like the only thing you can put together online. There's a couple ways you can deal with it, right? You can block the person, then it's not your problem anymore, which is the easiest solution. And I myself, big proponent of it, love it. But if you want to stay engaged, like what Bill's asking, and you want to help the situation, one of the things you can do is don't engage with that content that person is putting out, okay? Which is not to say don't engage that person at all, but you can literally go to someone's like account and find something that they've said. It doesn't matter what it is that is different than that. And like that thing, engage with that thing. Find if someone's screaming about like, the Zionists in the 41st millennium, this wackadoo nonsense, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They probably also have a post somewhere where they're like, loved Oppenheimer, the movie, like went to see Oppenheimer, had a great time. Go and engage with that. And go say, oh, you know what? Cillian Murphy's a great actor.
Mm-hmm.
Loved Oppenheimer. Click the little heart. And what happens is, over time, and this is not instant, but over time, it's a functionally equivalent alternate behavior. The function is they want that like and that engagement. It's equivalent because liking their Oppenheimer post or their post about like whatever, some Transformers movie they liked or their new cat they adopted or whatever, by liking those things, that's an equivalent delivery of reinforcement to the other thing. But then the A comes in, alternative, right? But it's an alternative. So instead of engaging with them on the thing that is awful, you engage with them on the things that are not awful. And it shifts the balance toward them understanding that posting not awful stuff is also bringing value. It also generates reinforcement. Does that make sense, or is that too abstract?
No, I love that. That's deep. Crazy.
We're going to go back to the quitting smoking example, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So when you quit smoking, very few people quit cold turkey. Very few people just put down the cigarettes and go, no mas, and walk away, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Most people replace it with something. Snacking, chewing gum, nicotine patch, right? Nicotine gum, something. There's something that takes the place of it that is less harmful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a FEAB. It's a functionally equivalent alternative behavior, right?
Yep. Like
if you have weight problems, you're trying to stay away from soda, you drink diet soda. You're not cutting out soda, you're just making a different choice. You're shifting.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing can work in online discourse. People want to be heard, they want to be engaged with, they want to be part of the community. The way that they have learned to be part of the community is by being awful to each other.
Yeah.
Now, we don't have to train them. We don't have to teach them how to be better people because they're probably not bad people. I mean, probably some are, but, again, speaking generally,
sure.
I've only ever once or twice seen anyone with like actual white power crap on their actual models. You know, I have seen it. Like I'm the guy. I've seen it. It did not go well for that person. They were not welcome. They were vigorously invited to seek their entertainment elsewhere. I'll put it that way.
There you go.
But most people aren't S blank blank T heads, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like in real life, but they are engaging in behavior online that is wildly out of whack. So you don't have to teach them how to be better people, but you can help train them to respond more to the things that are less awful.
Steer them in a better direction. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. But you can't do it directly, because if you tell someone, hey man, how about you stop screaming about the skin color of Space Marines on the cover of like a Gav Thorpe novel and pull your head out of your you-know-what and just like, let's talk about Oppenheimer, that's never going to work because it's so oppositional, right?
Sure. That's an attack.
But what you can do, is you can go, all right, I'm ignoring this nonsense, and we're just gonna go over here, and I'm gonna put a little more effort into talking to you about, you know, how much you liked this movie or that movie, you know, or whatever. Or like, yeah, I like the picture of your new car, you know, like, so because everyone posts different stuff. No one is a monolith of hatred online.
That's true.
So
I know I used to watch Arch Warhammer, right? So.
There are a few lines I draw, and that's one of them. I will not be a part of that solution.
Sure. And again, we're talking generally. There's people out there who are best described in the After Dark segment. Go sign up on Patreon so you can hear about it. But yeah, there are people out there like that.
Yep.
And sure, for them, yeah, cut them off. Who cares? Right? They already have people who are pre-escalated to their level who want to engage in that, and you know, you're not going to make a dent. But if you do want to make a dent, you do want to make a difference, it's as simple as showing a little bit of restraint and using this FEAB approach.
Yeah.
Reward the things that you want to see more of. Don't punish the things you want to see less of, because it has the same effect, but it's not oppositional.
Yeah.
So like you know, you guys, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be personal, but if you guys have kids, I don't want to pry, I don't know. But if you guys have kids, or you know people who have kids, there's a really, really simple version of this that everyone has seen, and nobody, unless they're trained in behaviorism, really understands what they're seeing. Okay. Let's say you want to get a kid to do a chore, like help set the table for dinner, right? No kid wants to be asked to do that. And we're talking about kids, not like, you know, 9, 10-year-olds, right? Old enough to be trusted with it, you know, not so old that you know, they can understand the logic of why they're supposed to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have a kid between the ages of like, let's say 7 and like 10, and you want the kid to help set the table, but the kid wants to watch cartoons. If you say, hey, I want you to set the table for dinner, please, the kid's probably not going to do it. They're going to resist, right? Mm-hmm. Unless they're extremely well-behaved, extremely helpful kid. Typically they'd be like, okay, well, 5 more minutes of cartoons. I want this, I want that, you know, because that's just the natural testing of boundaries at that age. So, okay. So literally just changing the language of how you're doing it and showing a little restraint, you can get the kid to do it on their own volition. And the example of this will be, you state it by implying what the benefit is to them. So instead of saying, I want you, to interpersonals, to set the table for dinner, please, right? What you can say is something like, hey, once the table's set, we can have dinner.
Okay.
And it's a tiny, tiny change. But once the table is set, it's just a statement about the environment. It's just telling them what the expectation is. And then you're saying we, not I or you, not I need you to do this, but we can do this. And then you're presenting something they want, which is dinner. And then it unlocks their option to choose to be helpful and to choose to do it on their own, in which case they have now been, you know, motivated to do something on their own accord that's going to have a beneficial outcome for them, because they'll get dinner and you'll say thank you. That's the reinforcement. So similarly online, if you tell someone like, hey, I need you to stop screaming about, you know, women in 40K, they're going to resist, right? But if you say to them via your actions, if you say to them, hey, once you post things that aren't screaming about women in 40K, you're going to get more likes, right?
Yeah.
That's the parallel there. You're saying that without using words. You're showing them that the stuff without 40K nonsense in it and hate in it gets more likes. Most people will just automatically gravitate toward that and think it's their choice.
I like that. It's kind of subtle, and it's almost manipulative in a way.
Well, it is. It is manipulative. You're manipulating your language to generate a result that you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You're not manipulating a person. So yeah, there's ways you can do it. But the point is, you get more, you know, you catch more flies with honey, right?
Yeah.
And that's as true online as it is here. But the way you do it is you find the thing that isn't hateful and you reinforce that. And in order, let's wrap it up, right? The reason that AOS doesn't have this problem is partially because of what you said, Bill, about the, you know, people, the community self-correcting during the end times.
Yeah.
right? A lot of people left. So the people that re-entered the AOS scene either didn't care about that, right? Because they just didn't.
Sure.
Or they're the people who actively disliked what's happening before, and it's becoming a FEAB for them.
Yeah.
They're like, I didn't like all the screaming and caterwauling at the end of 8th edition fantasy about like, oh, Mind Razor, like demons, dark elves, you know, like I didn't like that, so I left. But now here's this functionally equivalent alternative, AOS, that I can have fun with, and fun is my reinforcer. So I'm back, baby. Like no one had to tell me to come back. I did it because it scratches the same itch I wanted. And that's, you know, you can do a lot of good in changing people's discourse by just rewarding and reinforcing those things that are positive, and then not trying to change their mind on the things that are negative, because every single person on this earth is a mix of positive and negative, you know?
Sure.
Even the most, even like, you know, Arch Warhammer probably loved his dog, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, no one is just one thing. And that's really important that we go into that with that mindset, and we actually can improve the discourse online.
I like it.
So that's a 30,000 foot view. You know, it's the bird's eye view of it. There's a lot more crunch to it. Anyone who wants to learn about it more can contact me, and I'm Ulf_paints on like almost everything. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. I love talking to people.
Yeah, and so when Ulf approached me with just this wall of information, definitely got a little bit more detail and granularity than we can have over chat. But I thought it was important for everyone who listens to, you know, our podcast to be able to hear this stuff, because it gets into the nitty gritty of what we had been approaching with the Femstodes issue, and gives us an idea of, one, the behaviors to look out for, but two, the types of behaviors we see in the AOS community that keep us who we are. I really thank you all for your expertise on all this stuff. It's been quite a hour, Bill, of education.
And yeah, I mean, I am kind of sitting here almost like stunned, because that was a lot of knowledge dropped on us in a short time, and it's really made me think about how I have engaged with that sort of stuff in the past, and how I've really just not approached it well. Because like you said, I pretty much went about it wrong, thinking that I was doing the right thing, but now that there's actual alternatives, that's huge.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people feel that way because it's natural to want to engage with people and improve things, because that's what you're wanting to do, right? You're wanting to take a situation you don't like and make it better.
Yep.
So we can do that, but sometimes the tools for it are different. You know, it's like if you want to drive a nail, you probably want the hammer, not the screwdriver. You know, and it's tough. You know, people are complicated, and in some ways we're all very, very simple and very, very the same. And there's a lot more to it than that. But yeah, I like the AOS community, like nothing beats finding someone who's like being a little bit of a you-know-what head, and finding their like a picture they put on and going, you know what, I love the colors you put on this guy. Like these Magkin and Nurgle look great.
Yep.
You know, like that Storm Raven is dope. It's as simple as that sometimes. And they will want to talk about that more. They just will.
I love that. That is awesome.
You know?
So a lot of food for thought. Bill's just staring off into the distance right now as he contemplates the meaning of his digital existence. But,
I'm really still contemplating a lot of that stuff, because it's such a different viewpoint, and it really does change my focus on how I look at those things. So,
and can I make one recommendation just to the listeners real quick?
Please.
Just from a mental health standpoint.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of tools out there for people to help themselves with mental health. Mental health is near and dear to my heart. You know, obviously it's what I've chosen as a career. I was involved in like charity projects involving the gaming space. You know, we donate armies for, I don't know if you're familiar with, you know, AOS Radcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I donated 3 like 2,000 point armies for the giveaway last time we did the Rantathon.
Nice.
You know, we like this stuff does matter. Like I have put my money where my mouth is on this. So the reason I say that is to people to take this part seriously. Because like us, you know, BSing about Skaven and what we think about the movement phase, whatever. That's whatever it is. If you find yourself in a situation where you're getting angry about things, where you're getting heated about things online, where you realize like this doesn't matter. This is made up IP, and within that made up IP, there's some additional made up IP, and I'm now mad because of the lack of genitals or the presence of genitals on models that will never hit the tabletop, right? If that's what's making you mad, honestly, it might be beneficial to you to take a look at, is there some other thing that's making me mad? Is there a reason I'm reacting this way other than, you know, if I don't have a YouTube channel, I'm not farming likes, you know? There's a lot of resources out there for people to talk to people. There's a lot of resources out there to connect with people and share things that might be on your mind. I'm a big proponent of therapy, obviously, but it's not for everyone. But there's things out there like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT is a very effective tool. If you find yourself with irrational responses to things, if you find yourself going like, I probably overdid that, maybe talk to someone. I'd encourage everyone to be honest with themselves. And, if you feel like something's off, like maybe it is, yourself to a certain degree better than other people do. So if anyone starts feeling that way, I'd really recommend they, take a small step toward doing something about it.
No, good PSA there at the end. I really do agree with that. As you know, we've had just some call outs to that stuff, particularly around holidays and everything. But now that we're talking about the bigger picture, I think it's important to loop it back around to that. So great call out there. I mean, all in all, that was the show. We brought the expert on so we could all have a little bit of a significant amount of education, right? and hopefully be able to approach the situation better because, we want our community to continue to thrive, to be a safe place for all of us. We have ways, we have tools that can help us get people to maybe move away from the wrong end of the dial, right? Yeah. This conversation, I'm sure we're going to riff about a little bit after dark. Ulf will be joining us, so it's going to be another special edition of After Dark.
Yeah.
So I encourage you all to join us there, and then subscribe, follow, or whatever.
Leave a review.
Hit that notification bell.
Don't forget to comment on your favorite part and the part you'd like the least so we can fight.
Yeah, there we go.
So, escalate in 3 sentences. Let's do it. So at this point, we're going to be transitioning after dark. Thank you, Ulf, for joining us here. Please stay tuned if you want to hear Ulf cuss a whole bunch about Fire Slayers. So
fired up, baby.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, this is end of episode 161. We'll see you after dark.
The music in the show is used courtesy of Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com and is used under the Creative Commons license. The Rolling Bad podcast itself is protected under the Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License. Information for this license can be found at creativecommons.org.